Things were looking pretty rough for the guy. People were screaming, freaking out, asking if their leader was okay. A teammate was begging him to open his eyes. He groaned awake, wincing, and asked how the subjugation mission went. One of his guys was straight up crying, but he managed to get out that the mission was a success. They'd taken down the final boss. Our hero managed to smile, saying they actually pulled it off. This creature was on another level compared to anything before. It took 3 years just to trap it, and hundreds of people died in the process. His friend told him to stay awake, and a girl chimed in that the medics were on their way. The MC thought they had to be kidding him, or thought he was an idiot. Half his body was already gone. He looked at the crying girl and told her to gather the rest of their team. After that, they could finally rest after everything they'd been through. Heading off to the next life, he said that was all he could do, apologize. This guy was Korea's first ever hunter, and the one who set up the whole hunter system, but he met his end fighting the final boss of the dungeons. Cut to somewhere else, and someone smacks a kid upside the head. A bunch of guys were trying to bully him. A red-haired kid was asking if their classmates seriously didn't buy them snacks. They surrounded the kid, saying he must be joking, but the one getting bullied was our hero, and he realized these kids had made them their errand boy in this new life. He flashed back to falling, wondering if he was really done for since he couldn't move. A voice boomed that humanity could finally be theirs, now that Junwoo was gone and no one was left to stop them. While falling, the MC told the voice to shut up with that nonsense. There were still plenty of hunters left to beat them. He went on, saying they'd learned all about those creatures, built all kinds of weapons for the final fight, and there would be even stronger hunters after him. The voice said the system he'd built wasn't bad, and that they'd be back in 40 years. Hearing that, our hero demanded it repeat what it just said. That being said that when they returned, it hoped humanity actually had some decent resources to fight them. The MC shot back that when that day came, the monsters wouldn't be anything more than cockroaches compared to humanity. And somewhere else he woke up. The boy was totally confused, wondering if he was in a hospital. He knew he was forgetting a ton, couldn't remember something important, but the last thing he knew, he was fighting the final boss, Digantina. He looked in the mirror and thought, whose face is that? Grabbing the mirror, he wondered if he'd been turned back into a teenager, but that was impossible because this face didn't even look like him. He figured he needed to get as much info as possible to figure out where he was. Elsewhere, a guy with a doctor said the boy finally woke up. The guy came over, introduced himself as a cop, and said he had some questions. The officer stated the MC's info, but the boy replied that he was actually born in 1975. The cop and the doctor just looked at each other, totally confused, wondering if the kid had lost his mind. The cop asked if he could remember what happened before the accident. Our hero said all he could remember was getting messed up fighting monsters in Digantina. The cop asked the doctor if Junwoo was insane. The doctor said the boy needed more rest before any more questioning. The cop kept pressing, asking if the kid really thought he was the hunter Junwoo, and the doctor said it was normal for people to see things after an accident. The MC asked what situation he was in. Hearing that, the cop figured the boy couldn't remember anything. He explained that the day before, the protagonist got jumped by Bangsini, but because it was so early, there were no witnesses. He asked again if the boy really didn't remember anything, but the MC stayed quiet. The cop sighed and, straightening his shirt, said he understood. He handed Junwoo a card, telling him to call if he remembered anything. As he left, the doctor told the protagonist to rest, but before he could go, the MC said he needed something. A little confused, the doctor asked what, and the protagonist asked him what year it was. Answering, the doctor said it was 2051. The MC was completely shocked. He tried to stand up, saying that couldn't be true. The next second, he threw open the curtains. He thought he must have heard wrong. He remembered Seoul as a ghost town wrecked from monster battles. It was where homeless people and refugees ended up, getting treated like garbage. He couldn't believe how much it had changed. Looking out, he saw buildings everywhere, families with their kids just having a good time, all smiles. With tears running down his face, the MC said that view meant his comrades did their job right. As he watched, he wondered if his friends were still alive. Since 42 years had passed, they were probably already gone, together somewhere. But then it hit him. All those years had passed, and his expression went from wonder to shock. He said to himself that 42 years had gone by, and according to that voice, it wouldn't be long before the monsters showed up again. Suddenly, the whole building started shaking. A megaphone announcement blared that there was a major crisis in the hospital. Alarmed, the protagonist wondered what was going on. Somewhere else, a portal ripped open, and people were running away in a panic, screaming for someone to call the Hunters Association. Our hero started sprinting out of the hospital, thinking he could see how much monster subjugation had improved in 42 years, and got to where a huge crowd had gathered. After seeing what was happening, he was stunned. What were these people doing, standing in front of a portal like that? A soldier was announcing that a hunter was about to engage, and everyone needed to back away from the portal so they wouldn't get hurt. In 10 minutes, they'd lure the monster out of the dungeon. Hearing that, the MC got angry. Why the hell would they do that? He flashed back to asking his team if they understood him, saying he'd repeat it. The MC had told them that when a monster leaves the dungeon, hunters lose control of the area. It was common common for the city to get wiped out when that happened, which is why subjugations had to happen inside the dungeon. That was an unbreakable rule. He asked if they understood, and the men said they wouldn't forget. Back in the present, the protagonist was pushing through the crowd, muttering that the guards were insane. A reporter was asking if they were ready to start broadcasting, but before they could, the MC cut in, asking what the hell they thought they were doing. He demanded to know why they were letting monsters out of the dungeon. Monsters weren't toys, it made no sense. But before he could finish, the crowd erupted in applause and cheers. A huntress was arriving. There were guards in front of a car. Someone stepped out to huge applause. Her name was Go Eun-chae, and as soon as she showed up, the press started snapping pictures like crazy. Our hero was surprised, wondering if she was a modern era hunter. She was so young he couldn't get a read on her abilities at all. The girl started walking toward the portal, and a light flickered on her wrist as she activated something. A system window popped up, saying permission was granted and B-rank abilities were activated. A guard shouted that monsters were coming out. A creature crackling with electricity appeared in front of the woman. Ice started forming on the girl's sword. The monster charged, but she dodged it easily and landed a hit with her sword. Some girls were watching, saying how amazing it was, that Go Eun-chae looked like she was dancing while fighting. A boy pointed at her and said when he grew up, he wanted to be a hunter who protects people too. Our hero watched with an awkward smile. Back to the fight, the girl leaped. She charged at the monster as it came for her, launching ice spikes at it. All her attacks hit the werewolf, and just like that, the monster was down. People were super impressed, chanting her name. Watching this, the protagonist started to laugh, but then his face twisted into an indignant scowl. "That's not how it's supposed to go," he said. "Is that what you call a subjugation?"
The MC thought this whole situation was a complete mess. You had a rookie hunter acting like a celebrity, relying purely on her flashy skills, while the support team was a joke. They weren't even backing her up properly. But the worst part, by far, was what she'd just done. This was a live combat situation with civilians and a ton of unpredictable variables, and she treated it like a drill. Right then, the MC kicked the camera that was filming. One of the guards got pissed and yelled at him, asking what he thought he was doing. The protagonist shot back, asking if they were all insane. Why would you bring monsters out of a dungeon and fight them right where civilians are? He explained that if a monster leaves the dungeon, it can adapt to the new environment and go berserk. The guard just looked confused. As the MC kept laying out all the problems with what just happened, people were recording him, wondering out loud if he wasn't just some random student. He kept going, saying the support was terrible. At that, the guards started getting annoyed. The protagonist asked if they seriously thought that was a subjugation because it looked more like a street performance to him. The huntress, Go Eun-chae, cut in. She asked if he was from the academy and said that what she'd shown was exactly what they taught in class. She told him he had a lot of energy but shouldn't assume the instructors taught them everything because the real battlefield was way different from the rumors he'd heard. The MC was incredulous. He asked if she really called that a battlefield. His look turned menacing as he questioned how she dared say something like that in front of him. His gaze scared her, but before he could say more, the guards surrounded him, telling him he couldn't act like that. The MC ignored them and asked if her name was Go Eun-chae. He told her flat out that if she kept fighting at that skill level, she should be ashamed to call herself a hunter. The girl just muttered to herself that it felt like being back in school and it was tough. The protagonist was a little confused by that reaction. Later, elsewhere, he was sighing, thinking about the voice that said it would return in 42 years. Remembering that, he thought to himself that if things kept going this way, everything was doomed. The hunters nowadays were weaker than the average monster. He needed to prepare for the coming disaster. But then he thought there was still a chance. His old crew might still be alive. If he could find them, he could do something. But how? He couldn't just go around asking random people. He realized he had a lead. The girl had mentioned a hunter academy. That meant someone must have founded that school in the last 30 years, and only one person he knew would have done that. He flashed back to asking his friend if he really wanted to start a school. His buddy said that was exactly it. If the war ever ended, he wanted to build an academy to look after the next generation. He even asked Junwoo to pick a name. A bit unsure, the protagonist suggested Korea Hunters College. His friend laughed, saying the name was too simple and wouldn't get any attention. Back in the present, the MC was standing in front of that very school. He wondered if his friend had actually used that name. The place was huge. A security guard asked what he was doing there, saying he'd never seen him before. The MC said it was nothing like that, he was just looking for someone. The old guard, assuming he was there for Eun-chae, told him to leave. The protagonist said that wasn't it either. Then he asked if the guard knew someone named Bae Woo-shik. The guard looked confused and asked if he meant the director. The MC said that was right, he wanted to meet the owner. The guard said he couldn't just see the director if he wasn't a student, then asked if the boy was a special admission student. The protagonist was confused by the term but went with it, saying he was a special student. The guard, giving him a weird look of pity, told him to follow. They entered the building and after a few minutes, something startled the MC. There was a giant portrait of his old self hanging on the wall. He blurted out, asking why that was there. The guard hushed him, telling him not to yell. The MC apologized, but he was blushing, wondering why his friend would put a massive portrait of him at the entrance. As they walked, they passed more pictures and quotes on the walls. One said, "Adventurers are made of 99% willpower and 1% talent."
talent. The MC wondered if he'd actually said that. He didn't remember it at all. They reached the director's office. The guard knocked, apologized for the interruption, and said a boy wanted to speak with him. A voice from inside told them to come in. Before they entered, the guard warned the MC not to do anything stupid. Inside, the guard announced the arrival of a transferred special student. The director looked confused, saying he didn't recall any special student transfers this year. The guard excused himself to get back to work, leaving them alone. The protagonist stared at Yoon-chae with a serious expression. The director walked toward him, saying this was odd. He stated firmly that he hadn't approved any special admissions and demanded to know who the boy was, warning that if he couldn't explain himself, he'd be punished. The MC didn't react to the threat. He just asked how his friend was doing. Yoon-chae was completely confused. The protagonist continued, saying he almost didn't recognize him as an old man. He asked if Yoon-chae could recognize him, and then said his name was Junwoo. Yoon-chae was stunned, muttering that in all his life he'd never met someone so crazy. He went to call the guard, telling him over the phone to remove this random kid from his office. But before he could finish, the protagonist asked where Sun-young was. Yoon-chae froze and demanded to know how he knew that name. The MC said casually that Won-chik used to chase after her and always got rejected, so there was no way he'd forget. Then he asked if his friend ever managed to marry her. Hearing that, Yoon-chae rushed at the protagonist. He grabbed him by the collar and shouted, demanding to know who the hell he was and how he knew all that. The MC just started laughing. He said he never thought he'd see the day Yoon-chae grabbed him. With a slightly irritated look, he commented that a school director is pretty daring. At that, the man's grip loosened and he stared in shock. The MC started dusting off his shirt. He said his friend many times before, even if he was facing the greatest monsters or the most powerful people, he needed to stay in control so his target couldn't escape. And hearing those words only his leader would know, the director was terrified. He stammered, asking if the boy standing before him was his leader?
The scene flashed back to years ago at the Subjugation Management Headquarters. Someone was screaming, demanding to know what everyone was doing. The guy had a blade pressed against a woman's neck, yelling for them to bring him medicine and food. The MC asked what was going on. One of his men explained that the kid had been kicked out of his shelter because he had a disease and was now desperate for medicine. The protagonist asked if that was true. The man said they thought so because the kid's brother was sick. Our hero started thinking. Then, without a word, he began walking toward the hostage taker. His companion panicked, wondering what their leader was doing. The man with the knife shouted at the MC to back off or the girl was dead, but our boy didn't stop. The guy warned him again, saying he'd really do it. The MC just shrugged and said the man could do whatever he wanted. Both the hostage taker and the woman were confused. The woman asked if she'd heard that right. The protagonist said he meant it. Nobody would care if she got killed, not with all the monsters running loose in the city. The young man tried to speak, but the MC cut him off, asking if he didn't have the guts to go through with it. He laid it out. If the guy wanted the medicine to save his brother, then he needed to be ready to kill everyone there to get it. The man was shocked. The MC kept going. He said that's just how they lived now. To save someone, someone else had to die. Monsters, people, it didn't matter. If you're going to do something, do it right. But if he couldn't even handle that, then he should stop wasting everyone's time and just go die with his brother. The man was completely stunned. A beat later, the guy shoved the woman aside and charged at our hero. He swung his blade, but the MC dodged it easily. He grabbed the man's arm and, without any effort, flipped him with a judo throw. The guy hit the ground hard and cursed. As he tried to get up, furious, he swore he'd kill our boy. Still cursing, he lunged again with the blade. Junwoo just smiled and said that was the spirit. A system window popped up, showing he'd equipped an item. He parried the attack with no trouble, then raised his finger right in the guy's face. Another system window appeared. The user would use the skill Explosive Flick. Wham! He landed the hit, sending the guy flying into a wall. The man was out cold. Junwoo called over his companion and told him to go look for the man's younger sister. She was probably nearby, and he still had medicine for her. The guy hesitated, saying they should rethink this. The girl might have a contagious disease, but our hero didn't care. If that were really true, the man would have been dead already. He told his companion to move it. Woo-shik nodded and went to do what he was told. The MC then added that they should take that guy back to their base and give him food. Woo-shik started to ask something, but the MC cut him off. That's exactly what they were going to do, because from now on, they were all comrades, part of the same team. Back in the present, Woo-shik was staring at the boy in front of him, asking if he was really that person. He looked like a kid. The MC said he had no idea how it happened either. He just woke up in this body. The director kept studying him, making Junwoo feel a little awkward. Junwoo said his friend clearly didn't believe any of this. Woo-shik admitted that was obvious. No one would believe that someone who died came back looking like a child. The MC told him it might help if he told him what happened on their first hunting mission together. As soon as he said that, Woo-shik punched him. Elsewhere, the guard was rushing back to the director's office. Woo-shik had called him, telling him
him to come remove that kid. Special student admissions brought in talented people, so he'd assumed the boy was one of them. He got to the door, ready to apologize for letting a random kid in, but when he opened the door and stepped inside, someone shouted at him to stay focused. He saw the kid making the director practice apologizing. The guard was totally confused and slowly backed out of the room. The protagonist was yelling at Woo-shik to keep going, not to stop. A few minutes later, the MC had an irritated look on his face, rubbing his cheek. Woo-shik looked embarrassed. The MC complained that his face hurt. The director apologized for hitting him, but said he only did it because he brought up that first mission. The MC said the world had changed a lot. Woo-shik agreed, saying it must seem strange to him. The protagonist said that was an understatement. Even monster subjugations had gone to hell. Just the other day, he saw hunters dragging a monster out of a dungeon. Woo-shik asked if he meant the one near the hospital. He said he already knew what his friend was thinking. The MC demanded to know why they did things like that now. Woo-shik explained that after their leader sacrificed himself on that last mission, the world got really peaceful. Powerful monsters almost never showed up anymore. The MC asked if that was their excuse for dragging monsters into the streets. He yelled that there was a limit to how reckless people could be. Woo-shik said there were other reasons too. With no real danger, it was hard to get sponsorships from big companies, so they had to put on a show. Hunters became celebrities, and the whole way subjugations were handled changed. Our boy said it wasn't too late to fix all this nonsense. Since Woo-shik was the director of the Hunters Academy, he could change things. Woo-shik said he'd already tried bringing it up, but with high-ranking people involved, he couldn't overhaul the education system by himself. The MC said if they reunited with their old companions, they might be able to do something. Woo-shik sighed and said that was the problem. The other members were the high-ranking people now, and as much as he hated to say it, a lot of them probably wouldn't be too happy about the protagonist coming back.
The MC asked if that was how he felt. Woo-shik was surprised and quickly said no, not at all. Our hero sighed and said nothing had gone right since he came back. Woo-shik tried to cheer him up, saying he should look on the bright side. The world was finally free from monster attacks, and their leader could just start a new life now. But our boy dropped a bombshell. He told him the final boss was coming back. The director was confused and asked him to repeat that. The protagonist did. The final monster was going to return. Woo-shik was stunned. He asked if he meant Gigantiana was really coming back. The protagonist said that was exactly it. He didn't want to believe it either, but that was the reality. Right before he was killed, he heard a voice saying the final boss would return in 42 years. Woo-shik said that couldn't be true, asking if his friend might have misheard. The MC shot back, asking if Woo-shik didn't believe him. He pointed out the irony. Woo-shik had just seen someone return from the dead after 42 years, but he couldn't believe the most powerful creature could do the same? The director looked awkward. Our hero said he was leaving. There was no point in staying. Woo-shik asked what he planned to do. The protagonist said it was obvious. He'd do what he always did, handle everything alone. Woo-shik told him straight up that he wouldn't be able to do much with that kid's body he was stuck in. The MC said he'd done it once and he'd do it again, but right before he walked out, he stopped. There was one more thing. He asked where his sword was. Doing everything alone without it would be way too complicated. Woo-shik said it was in storage. Because it was such a valuable item, they couldn't just take it out. The MC asked if he couldn't get his own weapon back. The director explained that the person in charge of storage was Sukdu. The protagonist perked up a bit, glad that his old companion had that position. Perfect. Sukdu always followed orders and was totally loyal. Woo-shik had to burst his bubble though. He said Sukdu would probably be one of the people most furious about the protagonist's return. The MC groaned, saying nothing was going his way. But Woo-shik said there was another option. Sukdu's granddaughter went to school here. He'd heard the chairman absolutely doted on her and couldn't say no to anything she asked. Our boy was surprised. He asked if Sukdu really had a granddaughter. Then he asked if he was supposed to get close to her to solve this. Woo-shik said it would definitely be easier that way. Our hero agreed it was worth a shot and asked for her name. The director said the girl's name was Go Un-che, and that the MC had probably already met her at that dungeon near the hospital. Junwoo's face fell. He said this had to be a joke. He asked if that girl was really Sukdu's granddaughter. Woo-shik said yes and asked if there was a problem. The MC admitted he'd been really pissed off watching that street subjugation and ended up getting into it with her. The director's eyes went wide. He asked if his friend had hurt anyone. The MC said obviously not. He just said a few things because he was angry and then left. He started replaying the scene in his head, what he'd said, how she'd fought, and then he shouted that he had no idea what to do now.
Woo-shik, confused, asked if he needed something. Our hero demanded the academy enrollment form. The man was totally shocked and asked if he was serious. The protagonist told him to just hand it over. His weapon was in someone else's hands, and to get it back, he was going to have to get close to Sokdu's granddaughter. Woo-shik stammered that wasn't the problem. The MC was too old. The protagonist asked what he meant by that. The director asked if he really intended to enroll at his age. The protagonist was floored. Woo-shik kept listing reasons why it was a bad idea. Our boy got more and more irritated. He said he wasn't there to make friends, he just wanted his weapon back. Woo-shik sighed and said their leader hadn't changed a bit. The protagonist said that was obvious, and that's exactly why he'd been the first one to die. A beat later, the director handed over the admission card. He told the MC not to be too hard on the kids. The MC said he wouldn't. He wasn't that kind of person. Woo-shik pressed, saying seriously, don't hurt them. They're just young. The protagonist said he'd decide how to act when the time came. The man yelled that he wasn't joking. Those kids were really weak. The The MC shouted back that he got it already. The next day, inside the academy, someone was looking for their classroom. It was the protagonist. He was thinking that, okay, joining a class. He felt a little nervous. He told himself to keep a low profile while he looked for Go Eun-chae. But a girl snapped him out of his thoughts, asking what he was doing just standing in front of the door. If he wasn't going in, he should move because he was in the way. The MC apologized and said he was going in, but for some reason, the girl leaned in close to his face. He felt super awkward. Then she asked if, by any chance, he was the dog from yesterday. The protagonist was totally confused. She walked into the room saying she didn't expect the transfer student to be that guy. Whatever. It had nothing to do with her. The MC asked why she was calling him a dog. She ignored him and walked off. He was even more confused. He thought to himself that kids these days were way more complicated than they used to be. When he finally entered the classroom, he felt a ton of eyes on him. Every single student was staring. A group of guys were whispering, asking if that wasn't the dog from the other day. Even some girls were saying the same thing. The MC realized what was happening and asked himself what was going on. First day of school and everyone was staring at him? He figured he'd just ignore it. He thought the academy would be different, but here he was, and no one had his item anyway. He looked around for a seat, but something stopped him. There was a bouquet of flowers on his desk with a note from Woo-shik congratulating him.
Seeing the flowers, he was a little confused. He wondered if this was really a thing they did for new students. He sat down, muttering that it was just a waste of money. A second later, he was startled by a huge commotion. Someone was yelling, trash-talking a teacher. It was some kid complaining that his teacher had forced him to come to school. As soon as this guy walked into the classroom, every other student looked terrified. Our hero thought to himself that some things never change. Kids still acting like they're all that. The loudmouth noticed the hero sitting there and looked surprised. Then he smirked, thinking a new friend had arrived. He swaggered over, saying he couldn't believe the protagonist was in his class. The dog from the other day had ended up in his homeroom. He said he never expected the MC to be here, not after he'd messed with Go Eun-chae and talked crap about hunters. Our hero was surprised and asked how the kid knew about that. The boy said the MC's video was everywhere. The protagonist realized he had no idea about any of that. The kid suddenly slapped the MC on the head, saying he couldn't believe the guy got into the academy after saying those things. He called the MC crazy. Only an E rank who picked a fight with Eun-chae? The protagonist was starting to get annoyed. The kid stuck his hand out in front of our hero, said it was nice to meet him, and introduced himself as Ju-sok. He added that the MC probably already knew who he was. The protagonist had an irritated look, remembering Woo-shik telling him to just endure the insults. So, forcing himself, he also reached out his hand and said his own name. Ju-sok burst out laughing, saying the MC's parents must have been idiots to name him after that famous hunter. Our MC was laughing on the outside, but inside, he was telling himself to hold back, to not punch this little brat. The kid then asked what it was like seeing Go Eun-chae up close. He said her body was amazing and her face was decent for her age. He laughed again, saying even though she was a director's granddaughter, she had no right to be so arrogant. If it weren't for all that, and if she didn't always have that determined look, she'd be his type. Suddenly, someone spoke up, telling Ju-sok not to go too far. Both the protagonist and the kid were surprised. It was the girl from earlier. The boy asked why she was bringing that up again. The girl shot back that Ju-sok should look in the mirror before commenting on anyone else's looks. He got in her face, asking if she'd lost her mind. He said he let things slide before, but this time she'd gone too far. The girl was unfazed, pointing out that they were both in Class E, so they were basically trash. Ju-sok argued he wasn't on her level. He used to be in Class B. She countered that it didn't matter because he didn't even know how to use his own abilities properly. The only reason he was still in school was because of his father's connections. If not for that, he'd have been kicked out ages ago. That made him snap. He lunged at her, ready to hit her. The girl squeezed her eyes shut in fear, but then, thump. Ju-sok was on the floor. Everyone in the class was shocked. How did our hero have the guts to do that? Ju-sok yelled from the ground, asking if Min-jan-woo was insane. Our guy just looked down at him with an indifferent expression. Ju-sok asked if he wanted, he'd do it again. Ju-sok scrambled up, asking if the MC really wanted problems on his first day. He shouted that he was going to have to beat the MC down so he'd learn his place in the school hierarchy.
The protagonist didn't care. He just laughed at the kid. Then, with an irritated look, he asked Ju-sok if he'd ever been in a real life or death situation to be talking like that. The boy ignored the question and charged. The MC dodged easily, thinking to himself that this kid's punch was pathetic. His movements were a joke. Even a goblin could take him down. Before the fight could go any further, the teacher walked in and demanded to know what her students were doing. Ju-sok got annoyed, complaining that of course the teacher showed up right when he was about to fight. As he backed off, he told the MC he'd find him later. They'd meet behind the school for something fun. A few hours later, Woo-shik had an irritated look on his face. He asked how the MC had managed to get into trouble on his very first day. The protagonist said he'd actually held back a lot. Woo-shik said he'd already cleaned up the mess the MC made, but he had no idea what Jusek might do next. Junwoo asked what he meant. Wooshik explained that the kid he'd hit earlier was the son of the Minister of the Subjugation Department. The kid did whatever he wanted and never faced any consequences because of his father's influence. Our hero said that explained a lot about how that kid turned out. The director warned him to be more careful. If the MC fought Jusek again, there was nothing Wooshik could do to help. The protagonist said he understood and would handle things his own way. Outside the office, our hero sighed. Just then, the girl from earlier startled him by asking why he did it. She asked if he didn't know who he'd messed with. He shrugged, saying he didn't care, he never liked rude kids. Then he asked why she was picking a fight with the boy. Jusek was only talking about Eun-chae. He stopped, surprised. He looked at her and realized she looked a lot like the hunter he'd seen during that subjugation. He glanced at the badge on her shirt, Go Ah-hyun. He asked if she was Eun-chae's younger sister. She said yes. The MC thought this was perfect. He could use this connection. But then she added that she wasn't really Eun-chae's sister. Different mothers. She wasn't considered her father's real daughter and wasn't acknowledged as part of the family. Our hero felt awkward and asked if she at least talked to her grandfather. She said they had a great relationship because he was the one who removed her from the family registry. Hearing that, all of our boy's hopes completely tanked. The girl apologized. Since she wasn't part of the family, the MC wouldn't get any reward for helping her. And since she's a new student, he should probably find someone useful to rely on instead of being alone at the academy. She said she'd thought our hero was different from the others, but really, he was just like everyone else, only cared about status. The MC replied that she wasn't any different. She judged him just for being a special admission student.
He told her that talking about family history and special admissions was ridiculous, especially for kids. The girl shot back that he should wait. He'd find out soon enough what it really meant to be a special student at this academy. He didn't care and just kept walking. She was left there, feeling a little embarrassed, thinking about what just happened. Elsewhere, the MC was talking to himself. He thought getting close to Eun-chae would be easy, but now he'd have to figure out another way. Suddenly, someone appeared behind him. The guy asked if his name was Junwoo and if he was the special student from Class E. Our protagonist was surprised and wondered who this was, but just asked what they wanted. Some guys were watching and laughing at him, and more people started showing up after the first guy appeared. In seconds, he was surrounded by 5 people in the hallway. The guy told him to follow them or they'd humiliate him right there in front of everyone. Realizing the situation, the protagonist thought to himself that he was getting a headache. Inside a school's storage room, our hero was following the guys who'd grabbed him. He wondered if this was their hideout. The place smelled terrible. Someone announced that their friend had finally arrived. It was Jusok. He said he had a question before the 6 of them made some unforgettable memories together. Why did a special student try to fight him? It didn't make sense. It felt like a dream. Our guy asked why everyone kept calling him a special student like it was some big deal. Jusok went surprised. He said some kid who got in through connections dared to talk to him like he was important. He added that if he wasn't currently being punished, he'd teach the MC a lesson himself. The protagonist should be grateful his friends were nice enough to do it for him. Then he yelled for his crew to get to work. One of the guys tried to kick the protagonist. He dodged easily. Our hero was surprised. The guy who tried to hit him just fell over on his own. Jusok laughed, saying the protagonist was good at dodging. More guys ran at the MC, yelling they'd teach him a lesson. He dodged another attack easily. He kept avoiding every punch and kick, wondering out loud if the teachers here didn't teach basic combat skills. The guy from earlier ran at him, shouting for him to shut up. This time, our guy didn't dodge. He drove his knee right into the guy's face. He thought to himself how pathetic this guy was. Couldn't even handle the basics. Blood sprayed from the guy's nose. He crumpled to the ground. Everyone else was shocked. How did our hero do that all by himself? The protagonist asked why no one else was attacking. They could all come. Hadn't Jusok promised unforgettable memories? Jusok got pissed and started cursing at Junwoo. Our hero, with an excited look, said if they were going to do something, they should do it right. Elsewhere, Go Ah-hyun was walking through the halls, still bad-mouthing our guy. She remembered him calling what she said ridiculous. She muttered that he talked big, but he didn't know anything about what was really going on. Then she overheard some girls saying Jusok's group had taken Junwoo somewhere. Other people were saying his school life was already over. He was the special student who got destroyed the fastest. Someone asked if the teachers had been told. Another person said no one wanted to get dragged into it. Go Ah-hyun told herself he deserved it, acting like he was better than everyone else. But then she remembered everything he'd said to her. She stopped. A moment later, she started running.
Back in the warehouse, our hero was looking at the 3 guys who'd brought him there. Jusok yelled at his friends, asking if they were messing around. Just charge and hit him. But they were scared. He'd taken down the strongest one with a single hit. Our hero said they were scared for no reason. He hadn't done anything special. He commented that their mentality and skills were like a child's. Jusok was shaken. He told his friend
friends to use their abilities. One of them said if they used their techniques, they'd get caught and expelled. Jusok said they just had to make sure they didn't get caught. The guys started getting ready to attack again. They had bracelets on their wrists. The protagonist realized they used the same items as Go and Che. Carrying swords around was probably harder, but the guys still didn't have the courage to attack. They just stood there. Jusok jumped down from where he was. He called them cowards. Showing his own bracelet, he activated it. Permission to use abilities granted. One of the guys warned him he'd be punished if caught. Jusok told him to shut up. He pulled out an item. A system window popped up. The user's skill rank was D. Abilities could now be used. Our hero watched with no expression. Another window appeared. A spear had been granted to the user. Jusok declared he'd make our hero beg for forgiveness and see how long he'd last. The protagonist called him a child. He asked if the kid even knew how to use abilities. One of the bystanders asked if the protagonist was an idiot. He was holding a weapon. The MC grabbed a broom. He asked if Jusok really thought summoning an item was an ability. He told the bystander he clearly knew nothing. He pointed the broom at Jusok. With an angry expression, he demanded to know how the kid dared to use an ability on another person outside a dungeon. At the academy office, a teacher was telling a colleague that one of her students, the one who enrolled today, had already gotten into trouble. He said the kid was bold, trying to fight Jusok from Class B. It was weird for a special student to be placed in Class E, though. That meant he had no talent as a hunter. The woman said that wasn't true. The man was confused. She explained he was wrong. The reason he was in Class E was because he didn't take the aptitude test. The man was even more puzzled. People who skipped that test usually had combat levels so high they couldn't be measured. He asked if the kid was really excluded from the evaluation. The only student to ever get that classification before was Go and Che. He asked if the two were on the same level. Someone with that much talent wouldn't be sent to the lowest class. The woman explained that the director himself ordered the MC placed in Class E so he wouldn't stand out. The man said that was strange. Hunters usually wanted to stand out. The woman said she didn't know the details. Before she could continue, someone yelled her name. It was Go and Che. The woman asked what happened. Our heroine said the MC was in trouble. Back to the fight. The broom and Jusok's spear clashed. The kid had an irritated look. He was barely keeping up. Our hero was effortlessly defending against every attack with just a broom. The bystander was confused. With a spear, Jusok should be able to handle someone at Baron level, but the protagonist was blocking everything and the broom wasn't even breaking. Frustrated, Jusok shouted, demanding to know why he couldn't beat an E rank. He tried to strike again. The protagonist still had that indifferent look. Jusok kept cursing, trying to land a hit. Junwoo stated calmly that a weapon skill is something to be used carelessly. The bystander told him to shut up. He was just a special admission student. The MC explained that the characteristics of an ability are defined by the weapon's core. He dodged another attack easily and asked what kind of core Jusok thought his spear had. Jusok angrily told him to go to hell. The spear's core was a gift from his father. That's how he got into the academy. After graduation, he was almost guaranteed to become a hunter. If he performed well, he could even join the student council. But now, he was struggling against an E-rank special student. Our hero smacked the bystander's hand with the broom. A system window announced the user had lost his weapon and needed to retrieve it immediately. The boy was confused. The reason? The protagonist now had Jusok's spear. He told the kid to pay close attention, learn how a real hunter wields a weapon. Suddenly, everything went dark. The guys were confused, wondering what was happening. It felt like night had fallen. Then things slowly returned to normal, getting bright again. One of the bystanders told his friend to look down. They all froze. Their shadows were rising up from their bodies. The guy our hero had hit earlier stood there, completely bewildered. Something had been taken from him. He just didn't know what.